Well, thanks everyone. Thank you, Donna, for inviting us. As far as where my poems are coming from, my poems are coming from Great Neck. Betsy's poems will be coming from Torrance, California. We've put this book together pretty much virtually and transcontinentally. Betsy will tell you more about that when I finally allow her to speak. And those of you who know me know that I can go on, so I'm going to try to limit myself a little bit. I was thrilled that Donna invited me back for Poetry Month. And I told her that we did have a book coming out, Betsy and I, and the book is called In the Muddle of the Night. Thanks to everyone who's purchased it, and thanks to everyone who will. I'm sure after tonight, they're going to be hard to come by, but we'll post information about how you can get your very own copy and even get one of us to sign it. Since we're not in the same place, Betsy has been given authority to forge my signature, and I suppose if she doesn't mind being illegible, I can forge hers. So we're happy to introduce to you In the Muddle of the Night. It's something that we worked 2 years to put together, and we're very proud of the book. We think it's a lovely book, and we hope you enjoy our reading, and we're going to leave plenty of time for you to read something of your own or something that for you represents Poetry Month. And if I didn't say hello to you, by the way, when you entered the room, it was just because I'm overwhelmed. So I'm taking note of who's here and who's not. Don't worry, I take attendance. And I really thank you. I really thank you all from the bottom of our hearts for being here. Betsy, you want to say something about the book?
Yeah, I'm pretty overwhelmed too, actually. I mean, we've got Peru. We've got Rosemary here from Peru. I know Neil was gonna wrote me a message. He was gonna come from Australia, but he has his grandchildren, and I'm just very happy to be here and giddy. The last time I was in New York, actually, Alan and I met at the library for a little while and worked on this book, and that was our only in-person exchange. We argue over who actually conceived the idea of having a collaboration, but we often found ourselves either writing to the same themes, or at one point we had the idea that we would, he would give me a prompt or I would give him a prompt and we would write to it, and that actually survived. One iteration, I think we have one poem pairing that came out of that, and that took about a year to accomplish. So we just found that sometimes we were writing things in response to each other's poetry. Sometimes we had things on the same theme, or we were responding to prompts from out in the world. So we kind of saw it as a conversation in poetry. And when we were trying to figure out how to organize it, Alan had the idea of pretty much dividing it into what I think he called poems by intention. I should look at the book. There were the intentional pairings, and then some that we just happened to have written to the same kind of idea, or something along the same lines, which he called stumbling into furniture, which is sort of how we go through In the Muddle of the Night. And so it's titled based on my poem In the Muddle of the Night, which, you know, I have my own sleep issues and Alan has his insomnia, so we thought that was an appropriate title for the book after we argued about bagel references, and he kept trying to convince me of the superiority of New York bagels and all that. So we think it's appropriate. I'm just really excited to have it come to fruition. And actually the last anthology that I put together was also based on a line from an Alan Walowitz poem. And that book is called Floored, and that's also on Amazon. But our friend Mark DiMartino in Italy suggested that one of Alan's lines would make a good prompt for a poem. And so I solicited other people's opinions, and everyone wrote to one of Alan's lines. So we've had kind of two really nice collaborations that have helped me see me through this pandemic. This past year has been, very difficult, and for all of us. So it's been really nice to have something to work on, and really positive thing. And anyway, I'm just so excited to have you all here. So we're going to start with my poem Noah's Ark, which I have I put that up in my virtual background because I had been to the Chagall Museum in Nice, and I just love Chagall, and I had a postcard for this particular painting, Noah's Ark, that I was carrying around and wanted to write a poem about. And then I happened to be in a workshop with Donna Hilbert, who some of you know, and she had us read a Charles Reznikoff poem and had us take a line from that poem and use that as kind of a launching pad for our own poem. And I can still feel my scalp just, my tingled because it was so perfect for the Noah's Ark poem I wanted to write. So this is after Charles Reznikoff and Marc Chagall. Where are the dead of the flood who missed the ship, who lost their grip, who were not picked to go below the rainbow's arc? Where are the dead of the flood, the ones who swam, the ones who float in indigo waters beyond their depth, beneath our vision, begrudged their breath, their souls unbodied, mortal bonds broken? Where are the dead of the flood? Their bones become reef, their grief unsanctified. Where are the dead of the flood? Where are the goats and the hens who sank, blown down on the whim of God? No burial for them in a fine linen shroud or in a matting of reeds. Below God's butcher block, a sea dyed red. There are the dead of the flood. Thank you.
And when Betsy sent me her poem, I worked very hard to come up with a response to it. As a few of you probably know, as my friend Ken, who is a champion swimmer, knows, I'm not much of a swimmer. And as my wife Jeanette knows, I'm not much of a swimmer. And I live in fear of drowning. So the poem was really right up my alley. My poem is called To Keep From Drowning, which is also the first line. To keep from drowning, I won't tempt fate, put my face in the water, move like a dog instead, but without the dog paddle that would get me there quick and happy. The desire to retrieve and please replaced by the need to see as much periphery as my own wake might allow. One lady, sick of me so soon, called me too cautious for her long-term liking. I told her, displacement's the cause. The water my body must move to stay out of its own way. I just want to know where I am, avoid the displacement of foreign places, uneven terrain, or waking in a strange bed that turns out to be my own. There's no assurance when it comes to water, so fickle, hard, and headstrong, in a steam pipe that can blow and flood all you own, or at sea, always out of control, the ebb and overflow, the tides foolishly answering the moon, the water deciding to lift you, pulling you any way it wants, or straight to the end. I know and have always known what it feels like to drown. Where are the dead of the flood, you like to ask? And shouldn't I know, the smartest, most sunken guy in the room? Thanks very much. This is a particularly appropriate time for us to do a reading. It comes right about the time of Passover and the time of Easter. Holocaust Remembrance Day is coming up on Thursday. And we thought we would try this pair of poems, which we happen to write about a lot, Betsy and I. So we had many to choose from. It's about some of our difficulty and discomfort of living in the world, a non-Jewish world as Jews. Perhaps those of us in Great Neck don't feel that way sometimes, but I know Betsy feels it out in California, being even further out in the diaspora. But this poem is based on a true experience that I had pretty often as a kid. It's called Easter 1958, and it's about living in a world that's not particularly Jewish. Easter 1958. To make me feel more welcome in their home, the new neighbor, Mrs. Kelly, told me her doctor's a Jew and she wouldn't consider any other kind. I was small and thought that friendly and fine, till one of her sons, Fat Bobby, I think, asked me why I killed the baby Jesus, which sent me crying from their house. The moms thought we could patch this up, but first I made mine swear that all this Easter stuff, not the pretty eggs in the basket, nor the man in the Kelly's entryway asleep and hanging from the cross, had anything to do with us. Still, I felt uneasy Easter morning when I went to pick a chocolate bunny from their creche of green excelsior, where Bobby assured me the now risen Jesus had been laid to rest just yesterday. And he said, sort of kindly, it was mostly thanks to me.
Nice. Mine isn't really seasonal, but it's along the same lines. Growing up, I kind of lived in a suburb where most of my friends were not Jewish. And my father went to the yeshiva, was raised Orthodox, and then turned away from Judaism, and barely, I think we had Passover Seders, and we had a Hanukkah bush and a Hanukkah snake who brought our presents and things like that. We had our own little traditions, but we had one of the places that I came across Alan was actually in Silver Birch, where they have, frequent prompts, and I forget, I'm trying to remember what the prompt was that I wrote this for, but my poem is called Alien Nation. And Alan and I came across each other a couple of times there before I got to know him also through virtual. And anyway, in isolation, a consolation prized, the Hanukkah bush attended by a stuffed tie-dyed snake, masquerading as our surrogate Santa, without beard or belly, bearing bags of goodwill. May it follow us all the days of our lives. Candles duly lit, dreidels spun, latkes fried, the golden pot won. The annual miracle, snake oil medicine to treat our family ills. 8 days, a week, and then around the corner, Christmas is in full swing. Shining tinsel hangs, silver icing atop a flock of sheep in the manger, knee deep in popcorn and cranberries, stringing along while singing a song. It's starting to look a lot like the little drummer boy sat in the corner forlorn. Like me, an outsider, a witness to incense and pine tree scents, hot cider bubbling, and families juggling strands of lights on shaky ladders. 3 kings arriving on camelback to meet the newborn. My first taste of Hazret, a bitter herb. Did I pronounce that correctly, Alan?
Very, very good.
Robbie. We were saying Hazret. I had to practice. Okay, I think, oh, whoops, I guess I'm introducing the next one. So we thought, given that that one was from Silver Birch, Silver Birch kind of took a hiatus, and we were all, a lot of us who love them, we're very grateful that the publisher Melanie decided to come back at the beginning of the pandemic. And the first prompt that she put up was really appropriate. It was about doors. And I think, given that we were all behind, a lot of us at that time were sheltering in place, or whatever they called it, safer inside, or I don't, all the slogans that all the governors put out. Anyway, we were all behind doors for the most part, and separated from one another. So the poem that I wrote is called Still. The lower half is ornately carved, fading under the filtered sunlight. The fault lines of so many years starved, of slamming doors, exits and returns, trying to salvage marriage again and again, or just endure, as disappointment and need gave way to grief and then denial, acceptance before the final letting go. But we're isolated here together, grieving again or still, though the stained glass in the upper half is cracked and we coexist behind it, still making do, still paired, locked down against our will. Yet the amber light flowing through still falls warmly on the worn floor, still draws a line between them and me and you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, my poem, which was written for the same prompt, it is kind of a takeoff of a very famous poem by Wallace Stevens. It's a poem like most of Wallace Stevens' poems that no one understands, but they claim to love. I love it. It's called Anecdote of the Jar. I'll just, the first stanza, because I memorized it because it's so memorable, from Wallace Stevens. I placed a jar in Tennessee, and round it was upon a hill. It made the slovenly wilderness surround that hill. And it goes on with two more stanzas that nobody understands. Well, my poem is a lot more comprehensible. It's about bringing pizza home on Thursday night. And Jeanette is probably going to be furious at me for reading this poem, because she's in it, and she usually takes offense. So it's called Anecdote of a Jar, not much after Wallace Stevens. It's been a long week already, and she knows I'm on my way, bearing standard Thursday night fare. So she texts as usual, the front door's ajar. This pleases me always, and I answer in kind, stuck at the long light just west of Gino's, eager but untrained thumbs not exactly flashing. Why is nothing what it seems? She knows I'm ready for such drastic change. I'm sorry, she knows I'm not ready for drastic change so late in the game. Then from the upstairs window, she sees me at my most entertaining. I pull up, juggling pizza and my keys, kicking the car door closed with my knees, which will ache for days, while keeping a firm grip on my cap, about to be torn away from my head in the late winter wind, as I try to stay upright on the slippery grass. Then, keys in my teeth, shoulder the front door, which gives way easy, and I note we'll need some paint come spring, and enter a dark house like a thief in the night, wondering why such a faithful one and so witty, who can make any door ajar, never remembers to make some light.
Very funny. We'll take that up later.
I'm sure we will. One of the the poems that we were happy, the pairs of poems that we were happy to include in the book were based on a contest that Betsy and I entered. It was the same contest that presented a prompt that we had to respond to. Actually, there were 3 contests in a row, and I entered the contest 3 times, and I'm proud to say that, as with most contests, I lost 3 times. What you had to do in the contest is take a famous line of poetry that the magazine gave to you and place it in your own poem. So they took a line from Emily Dickinson, they took a line from Gwendolyn Brooks, and they took a line from James Schuyler, and you had to write a new poem around that line. The line from Gwendolyn Brooks was a stunning line. The line was from Gwendolyn Brooks: "We are things of dry hours and the involuntary plan." Now, you can't write a better line than that, so it's almost impossible to put in a poem. I tried my best, and naturally, Betsy won the contest. She had the winning poem. Mine came in so far down the list it wasn't even cited, but I do have fun reading it. It's called Rent Party, and it's another biblical poem, which might be shocking to some of you who know how biblical I really am, called Rent Party, and you can listen to the line from Gwendolyn Brooks late in the poem. "Moses came down from the mountain, plenty tired and more than a little singed from the nearness of the flame. And let's face it, wandering through the desert is no picnic, despite the occasional and incidental shrubbery. The hungry folks who drag their feet till now, kvetchy, out of sorts, weary of promises, no milk and honey far as they could see. And when he arrived, he expected a welcome. Man, what'd you expect while you were gone so long? Who wouldn't have worshiped the golden onion, or at least danced around its root, if only for dreams of some yet to be fried potatoes?" He was finally spotted out the corner of one reveler's eye, but no one shouted from joy, "Hey, Moses is back." He muttered to himself something like, "We are things of dry hours and the involuntary plan," and knew this was not going to be an easy sell, especially for a guy slow of speech who dropped into this rent party, while not totally uninvited, with not much of a plan. Everybody knowing of his checkered past, and let's face it, no track record for bringing home the bacon. And what was this he was carrying in his arms? More unpaid labor nobody was exactly praying for. Thanks.
Oh, I hate following you.
Well, you were the winning poem, so it's called, Betsy's poem is called Purisance, and she'll explain what purisance is.
Thank you. We had to,
and I hate her for it.
Obviously, the people who judged the contest had no sense of humor, so mine is much more serious. But the word actually stumbled across it, and I thought it was perfect for what I was trying to get at. But according to Wikipedia, purisance can be understood as an adaptation to an environment in which fires are regular and in which post-fire environments offer the best germination and seedling survival rates. And it's funny, we looked up, there were 20 something different pronunciations, but we decided to go with purisance for now. So it's with the line from Gwendolyn Brooks. "We are things of dry hours and the involuntary plan. Seeds blown in, soon buried in sand. dry hours without comfort of need or touch of skin without clan. We are things, we hunger for lost hours, the involuntary spill of the hourglass and its quicksilver sand. Under the glare of things in our hubris we planned. I don't know why I always stumble over that word. Our plans were dry things of involuntary hours spent laying low on terminal hold in traffic jams. Our final seconds stretched out like hours. We were parched. This was not part of the plan. We became dry tinder in our last thin hours before our bodies unmanned. We drop like a spark, leave a wildfire burning, crack the shell from the seed, find release, a new plan. And I also thought that was very appropriate for the pandemic because of the, I've definitely, I'm sure we've all missed, the touch of skin and comfort in our clan. So it was, I think, almost foreshadowing that. I guess I'm up for Alan. Alan made this lesson plan for me. So the next ones that we're going to read are.
I saw Holly laughing because Holly was my student teacher many years ago, and she knows I would yell at her for not having a lesson plan in the morning.
This is the fourth version that Alan made even, and so I have it here just to make sure that I keep on track since I know I'm being evaluated. So in this from Stumbling into Furniture, like I mentioned before, was just kind of discovering that we had similar themes running through our work and some ideas and poems that we had actually written in different times, but in similar circumstances. And the one that I'm going to read was for my father, who died about 5.5 years ago. And it actually also has an epigraph. It's after coffee break, a line from, it was after coffee break from Kwame Dawes. And I love that poem. If you haven't read it, that's a phenomenal poem. So it's called I Was Texting. After your breakfast and a shave, bathed and massaged, you relaxed. The intake person had come. You hadn't been in hospice more than 18 hours. The dietitian stopped by to find out your favorite foods. No holds barred now that death was near. The social worker came to offer whatever other comforts she could bring. I muted my phone. After all of these visits and messages from friends and family, I focused on you at last. Your eyes were closed, but you were awake, I could tell. The thing to do was to read you a story, just as you had so often done. I don't recall the book, but as I told you the backstory and resumed on the page where I had left off, that damned prescription came to mind. I said, I'll be right back, and picked up my phone. By the time I finished, you had gone home.
And my poem is called Early Morning Story, and this really is to make it up for Jeanette, because she really was the inspiration for this poem. It was written about my father's death, which was, I guess, 30 plus years ago. It's just so interesting that Betsy and I came up with the same sort of idea about our father's death, and you can listen for it. Early morning story. My father lay in intensive care, not caring to live, and I didn't care to see him die. So I went away. It was night, late, 2 a.m. The corridors of Coney Island Hospital were empty enough to hold my grief, which I told myself I didn't feel. To this day, I wonder why what I tell myself can't be what I really find inside. You say Let's stop such telling for all time. So you take a book and read to me like the child I am, and your voice, insisting it be heard, above the noise my useless telling makes, falls soft and long and only on the sudden word. The simple phrase teaches me to listen, to attend, and so to love all over again. It feels so late, but now I know I could have read to him even then. There he was near the end, and he might have heard some love in me that could have soothed this dying man who loved me so, yet taught me to confuse the desire for things with a want of love. The peace I find so strong in your human voice is maybe in us all, maybe was in him, and now I know in me, if I care enough to look. Thanks, everybody. We're up to our last pair of poems, and we didn't know. We know that those last two poems were pretty sad, and we wanted to end on a little more upbeat note, a note of optimism, especially when we're so late here in this. We hope we're late in this pandemic. My poem is called, Betsy referred to this part of the reading as Regrets and Resets, which I think is pretty funny. Mine is called System Restore, which you know is a feature of Microsoft Word, which allows you to go back into the past and make everything right. You know, you just hit System Restore, and I thought that was a great concept that we all could use in our lives. So System Restore. Given the rate of decay, memory, word recall, such a small percentage of what we've loved remains intact, even as we look in the mirror and examine the lines on the graph that is our face, or study photos of who we've been before parts had been removed, and then the body stitched back together, though never again made truly whole. No wonder we've come to rely on System Restore to find that one place from the great and false imagined past where we can settle and promise ourselves and everyone we've ever loved that this time we'll try so much harder to make everything right. Thanks.
Yeah, I love that. I love that poem. So we decided that I have a poem that's particularly meaningful to me, and it does end on a little happier note than a lot of my poems do. So it's not paired with Alan's poem, although I do have a poem that's paired with his in the book. But it's from the section that we call Inheritance, and I guess it's sort of a reset. We decided it was sort of a reset, and it's called Plumbing. My inheritance of prunes, 1.5 bags unfinished, eaten ritualistically daily to avoid constipation. Also dates, 2 tubs, medjool, minerals and fiber rich, 5 prunes and 3 dates to start each morning, sweetly with expectation. This is how the day will go, movingly. Dried fruits, almost primal, handed down with his last possessions. The things he touched, now I eat them daily, tasting only sweetness. And that's for my father. Thank you. That's the last of ours, and we're looking forward to hearing all of you. Any of you that will read, we'd love to hear you.
I'd like to read.
Great.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for coming. Of course, before we're going to get to Robbie, And everyone, here's the advertisement. I've just posted it in the chat for purchasing our book, which of course our publisher would also love. And thanks to him. I don't think that Tommy Thomas is here tonight, but we thank him. He has Arroyo Seco Press, and you can certainly buy a book on Amazon, or you can message Betsy or me, and we'd love to sell you a half autograph book from one coast or another. And Betsy called on
Of
Robbie,
course.
so let's hear Robbie Reed.
Oh.
You
So
can
how
choose-
many?